I have an exercise for you. Can you describe life with a comparison? For example, use the word like. Describe life with a word like, life is like, and you fill in the blank. I will bet, because there's billions of us, there will be overlap between what we think life is and what it should be. So some people will say, life is like a box of chocolates. You'll never know what you're going to get. Another person may say, life is like an onion. You peel off layer after layer, and sometimes you weep. Or someone may say, life is like a coin. You can spend it any way you want, but you have only one time for spending it. So we have ideals about what life is and what life should be. And then we have realities, actual day-to-day, what it feels like today. The scriptures have several metaphors for what the Christian life is and what the Christian life should be. One of them is the theme battle, war. The Christian life is a battle. It's a struggle. And what we're going to notice is that you have to be prepared for that struggle. And you have to stay prepared for that struggle. And Scripture is going to use a metaphor of dressing up, being dressed up for the struggle. That's where we are in Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12, describes this metaphor. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. In the heavenly realms, in this dark world. Those are the two spheres where we are waging battle. And you have to be ready to think of life as a struggle. So if I had the exercise again, and I said, what is life like? You can say it's a lot of things, but it's also a struggle. And what Ephesians wants us to do is to think of life as a struggle, because then we will put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. And there is the four that we just finished reading in verse 12. For our struggle is not. It is because our struggle is not against flesh and blood. It is because our struggle is against the spiritual unseen forces. It is because of that we have to put on the full armor of God. I know that you can go on Amazon. I did. And I went to the fashion attire department, and there we have bathrobes for men. We have work and safety clothes. We have neckties. We have uniforms. Listen, have you noticed that during a baseball game, only a few people are geared up and the rest aren't? The spectators don't have to wear a mask. They don't have to have a glove, a mitt. What happens is, if you are in the game, you have to be dressed for it. Are you in the game called life, Christian life? Then you have to be dressed up for it. And I'm going to be calling it a duel. Dressed for the duel. Not just because the two D's, D and duel. It's because a duel has certain ideas about it. Do you remember duels in your novels or history books? It's a pre-arranged formal combat between two persons, usually fought to settle a point of honor. Now, I'm not so sure I can make a point that in Ephesians the point of honor is really present or not. I need to study it further, but I do know it's prearranged. It's a prearranged battle between two persons. It's hand combat. And so the word that we're looking at is the word wrestle. For we do not wrestle. Wrestle, though, gives us the wrong concept, like sumo wrestling or heavyweight WW whatever wrestling. No, it's not that idea. It's the idea of we fight. It uses this word only here in Ephesians 6:12. The word fight, we do not fight. We do not fight. That's why we have to dress up, because we do not fight against physicalities, but against spiritualities. We're fighting against powers. So, what does the equivalent of a mask and a mitt look like? What's the equivalent of being geared up? What does it look like to be dressed for a duel? Let's pause and think a moment about the implications. The first exercise I have for you is to write down some associations that come to your mind when you hear the word fight. What comes to your mind? Fight. What do you think of? And I want you to write these down. It's going to be important, because when you look back after studying the passage, you're going to be revisiting what you've written down here and let it interact with what the scriptures are going to tell you, and you're going to notice a deep rewiring of your ideas about life. So I began that conversation for you. What came to my mind is it's an ancient battle. This fight is not new. And by the way, when you write these things down, don't try to look for the right answer. Just look for whatever is in you, bring it out to the light and put it there. So a fight, this is a duel, this is arch enemies. This started way back in the Garden of Eden. The tactics may change over time. The tactics may be different for older people than for younger people. The tactics may be different for women than for men, but it's an ancient battle. It's an unseen battle. Wow, like a virus. Man, if I could see it, I would do something about it. It's because I don't see it. I kind of have to guess. Have you ever been engaged in a daily unseen fight? It also has to me the connotation of hand combat. This is not long distance stuff. This is mano a mano, hand to hand. This is very close. This is up close. This happens with an uncle, with an aunt, a husband, a spouse, a child. This happens really close. This happens daily with a boss. This happens daily with processes. This happens in the home, in the garden, in the car. This is close. This is close. Now I will need you to write down whatever associations come to your mind. You're going, which ones? Whatever comes to your mind. You don't have to be right, but deep down, just put down, fill in the box. Our fight is not against. What comes to your mind when you hear the word fight? I would like to hear that. So I'm asking you to put down in those first boxes the first idea that comes to mind, and then in the box connected to it, the associated practical idea. For example, I said it's an ancient battle, right? In the green box, the first box. Then in the blue box, the second box, the tactics don't change. The tactics change, but the battle is ancient. So the blue box carries something like an insight on how it connects with our real world. As a second exercise, after you're done with that one, what makes us believe that life is not a struggle? Is it because we see some of our friends on Instagram enjoying beaches, enjoying the sun or the cold or wherever is ideal in our life, and we're going, all of life should be that way? What makes us believe that life as prearranged by Jesus Christ is not a struggle? Could you come up with some ideas? Could it be some health and wealth thinking and preaching? Could it be some Bible verses that you've been taking? Could it be an ideal that people have described to you, your parents or yourself growing up? That's exercise number 2. No one wants to hear, that life is all made up of ambulance sounds or emergency room car sounds or emergency rooms and emergency vehicles. No, we don't want life to be made up like that. What makes us believe that life is not a struggle? That's an exercise number 2. Please write the answers down. Exercise number 3, how do we act differently? if life is not seen as a struggle. In other words, people who don't believe life is a struggle, how do you see them act? How do you see them behave? How do you behave when you think that life is not a struggle? That's number 3. And number 4, what other false beliefs are associated with this concept of life as a struggle? You know, we have many false beliefs that come with the whole idea of life as a struggle. And for example, we sometimes make the flesh and blood aspect more an issue than the spiritual aspect. I gave an example of working with a customer service where I really wasn't getting any customer service. How do you think I felt with the worker called John? It felt like my battle was flesh and blood. You see, a false belief is to think that I can win the battle by engaging the flesh and blood. Or is it engaging the flesh and blood alone? What makes us reduce a complex spiritual battle to merely taking out or changing that which can be seen? Our struggle, our life, is not against flesh and blood. Think deeply about those concepts and let us hear what you have answered so that we can pick up from there and go deeper in the biblical text.